Hi, everybody, and welcome. Happy International Women's Day to everybody out there. Today, we have an incredible webinar, very popular topic, lots of you tuning in, how to drive more e-commerce ROI with fewer website resources. So obviously a hot topic, financial results keep coming in and things could look a little more positive. So today we're going to talk through what can you do to essentially increase your ROI online with potentially less resources. So firstly, I want to go ahead and thank our webinar sponsor, Contentsquare, who you will hear from in a moment. I want to thank our speakers for taking their time, sharing their expertise. We know this is why you all tune in to hear each other speak, so thank you in advance. Thank you to the whole CommerceNext team behind the scenes, online, for helping make this webinar a success. Marketing team really does it incredibly well. And thank you to you all for being here. We know your time is valuable. So first things first, we have 3 things coming up soon I want to highlight. Firstly, a webinar in 2 weeks from today. It may be my birthday on that day, so I will take all your well wishes that day. Veronica will be here with 4 incredible speakers talking about enhancing e-commerce to surpass in-store retail experiences. So we do a lot that is online, and we're going to switch it a little bit and talk a little bit more about in-store in 2 weeks from today. Also, about 3 weeks from today, we will be at Shop Talk. There is a Top Golf reception that we will be having. Tons of brands are coming there. All of the golf puns will be out. We're making it to be a great, great night. So please join us. That is the Sunday night at Shop Talk. And then finally, as you all hopefully know by now, June 20th and 21st at the New York Hilton is our big e-commerce growth show. It's going to be bigger than ever. We have incredible speakers lined up. Please register now if you haven't. These are just a sampling of some of the speakers that we will have there, continuing to book them every single day, and we're really excited about this year. So, quick run through of what else we will have. Don't forget, if you ever miss anything, it's all going to be up on YouTube in terms of the webinars that we produce. There's about 250 now, I think, up there, which is pretty great library. And we will make this one live as well. It will be live on this platform for 2 weeks and then shifts over to YouTube. So if you are new to this Big Marker platform, probably not, but if you are new, I'll point out a few quick things. The top right of your screen is where you can click over to all the different tabs. There are handouts already up there today. It is a benchmark that Contentsquare has done. It's incredible research. You can go ahead and download that. Also, their slides will be available up there. It's always a very popular question. Then we also have chat, Q&A, and polls. So the chat, that is something that everybody can see. We would love to interact with you, find out where you're coming in from, who you are, what you're doing to celebrate International Women's Day, etc. Q&A, that is to ask the presenters questions. And then you can see a little blue thumb right under it. You can upvote each other's questions, and that helps me prioritize what to ask. So feel free to start typing in questions at any point, and then upvote each other's questions. And then we will know what to ask our great speakers at the end. Then finally, there are also going to be polls, and you can type in any and all questions and into that box. All right, that is where you would see the handouts. I skipped through that, sorry about that. But on the right-hand side, handouts, then right below that icon, that's where you download them. All right, so today's agenda. First, we're gonna have a presentation from Brian Strauss from Contentsquare. Then we'll come back together and we'll do some quick audience polls and see what you think, and we can react that way in our panel. And then we'll jump into our panel discussion with our incredible retailers, Brian Seewald and Jenna Flatman Posner. So I don't want to delay it anymore. I'm going to bring Brian onto the screen. And Brian Strauss is from Contentsquare. He's the GVP of Solution Consulting, which is a pretty cool title because it's technical and obviously service-oriented. So Brian, welcome. Thank you for your support, and thank you for all this research you did and that you are sharing with everybody today. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jill, and thank you to CommerceNext and to everybody who's out there. It's a pleasure and a privilege to speak with you on behalf of Contentsquare. Before I get into the presentation, just a little note about myself. So I do run the solution consulting group at Contentsquare, but I think more relevant to you in this discussion, I've been in sort of the digital experience analytics space, which is sort of, I think, a real subset, a practical subset of the analytics world for almost 18 years. So I go way back to a small company called Tea Leaf, with probably some of you may have heard of or may have used. But it was really interesting. I think the days back then was certainly different than we are now. I mean, we have people whose whole titles and companies' whole focus is user experience. But back in those days, it was really, we were here to kind of solve a problem that people hadn't really considered yet. This was back when, e-commerce, one e-commerce website didn't even equal the power of one in-store environment. And so it was a little bit hard to get people's attention. Certainly fast forwarding to now, the world has changed. I think there's not probably one person out there that would say that customer experience isn't important. But I think when we look as a not only a provider of software, but also just we have sort of 1,500 experts at our company who have been doing this as their career. I think clearly we have a perspective, and we like to leverage our data and kind of share our thoughts with you. And so that's what I'm going to do for the next few minutes, is just kind of take you through a few of the stats, but kind of contextualize what we're seeing with some of our own hypotheses. And I think that the goal here is to kind of be a little provocative and maybe drive some questions and discussions after this. So without further ado, let me get into it. So we look at this is an annual report that we put out. We are a SaaS provider. We host our analytics platform for a whole bunch of different verticals. So we gather all of this data anonymously, and we're able to draw some pretty interesting insights from it. We retain about rolling 15 months of data. You can see that stats below, but we've got 35 billion site visits that we've seen in that time period, and it does show us some interesting things. So that will be available to you, as Jill mentioned. You can download it whenever you want. But just looking at things across the board, right? So just in the last, as part of this release this year, what we're seeing, obviously, and no surprise, post-pandemic, coming out of the pandemic, traffic continues to climb. And I think that's one of the things that we've always thought was really interesting, particularly as a company that focuses on customer experience. We've actually been worried about this because the industry has sort of been building for capacity. And what we've seen is that, as you'll see in some of the statistics, right, is that bad experiences can kind of hide in that when that's the KPI, right? How do we plan for capacity, make sure all these people can get on our website, it doesn't crash, we can deal with it seamlessly, we have great performance. You'll always see that performance and customer experience aren't exactly always the same thing. So as we look across this, I think what we're seeing is that the bounce rate is up a little bit, right? And with that, page views per session is down. And certainly the one that's probably, just in general, maybe the most concerning to everyone is that conversion rate is down 3.1%. Now, just as I said a few minutes ago that probably all of you would agree that customer experience is really important, I think what's really interesting about that is that in general, we're not making a huge dent in terms of people's perceptions of customer experience, or at least, online. A lot of people report that they're still overwhelmingly frustrated, not at all times, but that they experience frustration in different facets. And you'll see in our own report here, we have some interesting kind of struggle metrics, which we tend to try to bring a little objectivity to this, and I'll get into that in a second. But, so when we, as a provider of solutions, the way we started to think about this, and as we approach the title subject, how do you do less, kind of do more with less? I think actually what we're saying is it's not about doing the same things with less resources. I think really what it's about doing is trying to go in do things a little differently, frankly. There's two things. There's two themes to this. One is just this understanding of the customer challenge out there, and I'm gonna do a real specific metaphor in a second. And the other is just, do we really have a good sense of how our customers are doing online? We all use so many different sources of truth across many different silos within our organization. Some people are focused on conversion. Some people are focused on campaigns. Some people are focused on performance. Some people are squishing errors. What I find interesting is while we're all doing that, if a customer or a group of customers started to hesitate within our stores or struggle within our stores, how long does it take us to figure that out? I mean, other than just an anecdote of coming into the contact center, of someone saying, I had a tough time, I couldn't hand you my money, or I had a tough time working the store, how do we actually find out these trends as they're happening? How do we actually become insights-driven businesses where we rapidly go from some recognition of customer behavior to quickly understanding what that even means, to then prioritizing a fix to our business in the context of business opportunity impact? And so we posit this question somewhat rhetorically today because I'm not sitting in front of you in a live channel, but I do ask these when I go ask customers, how would you know what happens when folks start to struggle? How do you become aware of it? How long does it take for you to fix these things? And what I'm getting at is that I think one of the fundamental things that we need to do as an industry is recognize that our customers are virtually alone in these stores, in our stores. If let's say you're coming out with a new major product and you have an in-store experience, I think you probably wouldn't take everybody out of the store, all the clerks, all the people running around trying to help customers find things and get those things. But that's precisely what we do online. And I think we need to start with a fundamental realization that when the customer has questions, and that some percentage of them are going to have questions when they're going through the shopping process. And then there's this funny part where we make the customers use the cash register, work the cash register by themselves after they've decided to hand us their money. And what I think is interesting is that by and large, when customers hesitate or struggle, no one swoops in to help them. And so I think what we're trying to do is encourage people to realize customers are alone. They're supposed to work the store by themselves. And we need to kind of break through those silos and all work together to do that. And so there's really an operational aspect to that. We'll get to that in a minute. I think in addition to the interesting slide a minute ago where customers are actually reporting that they're frustrated with their experiences, this bears out in our objectively in our benchmark data. And so what we're seeing here is that 1 in 3 sessions has some frustration factor. And I think what we're seeing is that those are a combination of different things. So slow page loads, that probably makes sense to a lot of you folks, right? Especially higher up in the funnel as these big hero images and glossy pages and graphics can potentially, impact core web vitals. But then we have some of these other fun kind of objective struggle metrics like rage clicks, where somebody really has an intent to do something and they quite literally, hit the click on something, whether it's a button or an image or something they think they can interact with, or whether it's a field that's happening, multiple times within, less than a second. We'll chart that as a rage click. Multiple button clicks, multiple use targets, multiple field clicks. So we're actually saying we are seeing these events in 1 in 3 sessions. This is a lot, right? So that would indicate that there's, despite all of our focus and importance on customer experience over the last 15, 20 years, there's still a lot of room to improvement. And I think what we are seeing, the good news though, is there are that sites with the highest amount of activity, bounce rate is decreasing. So we are seeing, obviously, customers, the more we can get people into search, the more that we can target customers effectively, getting them deeper, getting them to take obviously 1 or more or 2 or 3 extra clicks really bodes well for decreased bounce, right? So the way we start to interpret this slide and the way that translates to practical activity is to really work with our customers to really look at this as a process of micro conversions. How do I get someone to take 1 more click? How do I optimize the journey on 1 page? How do I position the right assets dynamically to actually answer questions and allow someone to go a little bit farther? And clearly that leads to a better conversion when we pay off those kinds of things. And so just to frame the conversation as we get into some of the questions we're going to talk about. What we really see is beyond sort of, just recognizing in general as an organization, or as an industry, that the customer is alone, and to maybe try to break down some of those silos. I really want to talk about we kind of distilled down a few of our best practices, and we have a whole session on this that we give to our customers and to our prospects. But I think what is that there's a natural tendency on the part of sort of analytics and product teams and technology teams to always kind of be forward looking. Here's the products, here's the new features we're going to build, here's the campaigns we're going to launch this year. And sometimes, planning for customers saying, hey, I'm having trouble, working your website today, is not something that we anticipate. Or we don't necessarily focus our attentions, at least a portion of it, in fixing what's going on now. And so when you look at the three things I'm going to talk about here, I'm really going to start with number 2, right? Which is, if you really want to become an insights-driven business, meaning that we are constantly rapidly making iterations to the website that improve customer experience, that allow you to gain market share, you kind of need to swear a blood oath to the customer, meaning we need to actually set up sort of an optimization team that's cross-functional, breaks the silos. You got some analysts, you got maybe a product owner, you got some developer time, and you've got really good executive support. And you, as an organization, say, listen, we're going to follow the data wherever it goes. We're not there to blame people, but where customers start to hesitate or struggle, we're going to put a system in place, maybe Contentsquare, to help us know when that's happening. We're going to assign people. It's going to be their job when we get a bad feedback out of the call center, or a voice of the customer survey comes in and says, I had a tough time working the cash register by myself. We're going to pounce on that. We're going to drive in and drill in and replay and find out exactly what that means. And then we're going to quantify the business impact. We're going to make a business case as to why we should go and drop everything and fix this stuff right now. And so it's sort of like, customers don't make it up. Let's find the biggest issues that are getting in their ways. Let's find the actual obstacles. Let's commit to also fixing what's in place right now. There's a lot of money to be made in changing a button, or changing a message, or improving a color, or making something more visible, or helping someone higher up in the funnel make a decision between 2 variants in a product dynamically. And then I think the real important thing is, learn from finance. Don't just count stuff. We're not here to just analyze. We want to focus on doing. And so the goal is to change code and then to talk about it internally. Tell the stories. Tell what you learned from your customers. Talk about your hypotheses and where it led you. Talk about what improvements you made. And in the end, tell them what worked, tell them what didn't work. It not only builds credibility internally, but it's something that you can kind of reward your teams for working together. And you can just build more and more momentum to make these improvements, which really there's a lot of revenue behind them. So what we're saying, just to recap, 2 points, right? Let's commit to breaking through the silos on 2 fronts. One is really recognize that our customers are alone. I think when we think about it that way, they've got questions, they have problems, they have hesitations, and no one's helping them so far, unless you want them to channel shift to a really expensive channel or just lose them to a competitor. But then let's actually put some organizational best practice together to have a single source of truth for our customers, so we can quickly understand when they're having a tough time and fix it. So that's really what it's about. And so back over to you, Jill.
That is awesome. Thank you, Brian. I love that you frame it in a vending machine way, because that is an analogy I understand. And who has not stood there and banged on the vending machine?
Banged on the darn thing. When it spirals forward, it doesn't help. And guess what? No one's there to help us.
Yeah, it's not taking my money. That it makes it clear. We spend so much time as retailers kind of looking at the experience and making sure they have somebody on site with them. Absolutely. But when you kind of reverse it out in the digital world, if they need that help, it should be there. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, even inside of a supermarket, when someone just says, hey, did you find everything? Okay, that's a really well orchestrated thing that we all kind of take for granted, but it doesn't exist online.
It doesn't exist online. So with that, let's take a poll of the audience, and we are going to ask 2 questions for this webinar panel, and then I have one for our upcoming. So firstly, we're going to open this poll. It is, how do you know as a retailer, how do you know if a visitor has an issue on your site or your app? Select as many of these as that you have enabled today. A, we monitor with technology. B, rage clicks. You know where somebody is clicking over and over and over and over again, because I've also done that. C, slow page loads. That tells you someone's having an issue. D, live chat. You wait for them to tell you. E, you look at the exit rate through analytics on those pages. F, customer complaints via other methods, email, Instagram, social media. Or G, other. So 25% customer complaints via other methods. Interesting. Okay. Then right after that, at about 20% exit rate on pages. So it does seem like there is absolute opportunity here for us to figure out how and why visitors are having issues. Okay. I'm going to go to poll question number 2. All right. So again, retailers, what changes have you made or will you make this year to address some of these resource constraints? So again, select all that apply here. We have laid off team members. We are cutting marketing budgets and total spend. We're cutting technology budgets. I think I said marketing technology. Separate those out. Spend. Scaling back on any new initiatives. E, we do not have any resource constraints. So please put those companies' names in the chat for others. And F, other. There's a different type of constraint that you're experiencing. All right. So far, a third are scaling back on new initiatives. 22% are cutting marketing budgets, but very few have laid off team members. And very few have cut technology budgets or spend. There are a few of you out there with zero resource constraints, about 12%. So put your company in the chat. And if you're hiring, put those out there too. So thank you. That is incredibly helpful as we shift over to our panel discussion in just a moment. So finally, our final poll question. This is for Veronica's webinar coming up on March 22nd. And here is this question. Which enhancements to your brand's e-com experience have yielded the biggest improvement in conversion or customer satisfaction? Again, select all that apply here. Thank you, Alan, for opening it. Again, these answers are search and navigation, speed of the site, brand storytelling, product-related content, video content and imagery, website personalization, chat or clienteling solutions, or H, other. All right, excellent. It looks like a quarter of you search and nav, or the biggest improvement, followed pretty closely behind with product-related content and speed of site. Oh, interesting. Okay, small percentage saying chat and clienteling, and some saying brand storytelling. And I know the 2 retailers we are going to shift to have done almost all of these. So this is a fantastic segue. So thank you. Okay. All right. So next up, let's bring on our esteemed panel. First, we have Jenna Flatman Posner, and she is from SNIPES USA, or SNIPES. Brian Seewald, SVP of Express, SVP of Digital at Express. And Jenna, I'm sorry, I just forgot your title. She's the Chief Digital Officer there. And then we have Brian Strauss on again. I know, I'm getting all my Brians confused. And then we have Brian Strauss again from Contentsquare. Welcome back, and thank you all for being here. Let's do a quick round of intros before we jump into some of these questions and then get to our audience questions. Reminder, audience, you can type into the Q&A and upvote questions, and we will do it there. All right. So firstly, Jenna, would you love to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jenna Flatman Posner, CDO at SNIPES. We're a global sneaker and streetwear retailer founded in Germany in 1998, came to the US in early 2019. We are, I can't even say under the radar anymore. We have over 300 stores. We have 10x digital over the past 3 years, and we are just, we're on fire. So we sell hype, Nikes, Jordan, Adi, Puma, product assortment akin to a Finish Line or Foot Locker.
10x digital, no big deal. Cool.
Yeah, no, it's
No
crazy.
big deal. No big deal. Brian Seewald, do you give a quick intro, please?
Yeah, hi there. So Brian Seewald, I lead the digital team and customer care here at Express. We are, I was doing the math, slightly older brand than Jenna's brand at SNIPES. We're 42 years old, and we are in the middle of a revitalization. And so we have a whole new leadership team that came in a few years ago, just in time for a global pandemic. We sort of redefined our brand purpose, which is to create confidence and inspire self-expression. And we are in the middle of very actively trying to transform our brand from being known as sort of a store at the mall, that's how people think of Express, to a brand with a purpose driven by a styling community. And you'll see that in our over 300 retail stores, and we have outlets as well. You'll see that in our website content and how we handle digital. But very actively and intentionally trying to change how our customers perceive us in an effort to rebuild and gain relevancy. So it's an amazing journey to be on, and I've been thrilled for my over 3 years here.
That's amazing. And Brian Strauss. I'm just going to go by last names on this webinar. So if people get confused, we're going to go Seewald, Strauss, Jenna. I'm still going to call you Jenna.
So we just like high school. It's great.
It would have been great if my name was Jenna. That actually really would have worked out well if all of us were, Freaky Friday here. So let's jump in with some quick questions. And Brian, you're right. I am absolutely seeing the conversion of both Express into more than a mall store, but also really the demographic changes that are happening as well. So it's working. So let's kind of step back before we get into all the resource constraints that we're dealing with and talk through industry benchmarks. How are you even evaluating opportunity for ROI in e-commerce and where you can improve? Like what do you use as kind of your benchmark for how to get better? Seewald, I'll start with you.
Perfect. So Strauss mentioned it, and he talked about micro conversions, but he also talked about conversion. And at the end of the day, for us, when you think about where our brand is in its evolution, it's honestly about conversion. And I've been in e-commerce since 08, 09, and that is sort of the one KPI North Star that we fall back on to, are we putting our customer through an experience that is good for them? Now, we look at a million other things. We look at average order value. We look at our average unit retail. We look at loyalty signups and email signups and all of those things too, down to like on any given PLP or category page, how often are customers getting to a product page? I mean, all of those are things we'll dig into. At the end of the day, for a brand like ours that is trying to go through an evolution, it's, are we converting better than we did a year ago? And are we doing so? I think the one caveat I would add is not on promotion. Part of our evolution of our brand is to get off of that drug over time, and to every year do a little bit less. But while we're doing that, increasing that conversion figure. And that's a new challenge and an interesting challenge for us.
Yeah, I think, Brian, we're absolutely on the same page from a KPI and metrics standpoint. You kind of touched on it there a little bit, right? Conversion really matters, but what are we actually converting on, and how are we leveraging technology to make sure that we're really elevating, boosting, varying based on margin, right? Based on the actual value that these products are bringing to the bottom line. EBITDA is a really big one for us. And so I would say that's kind of the added layer of complexity that I would put on your KPIs. Just say, yes, all these metrics are super important, but we've got to keep looking through the lens of profitability. And that's really important to us here at SNIPES.
Yeah, and the one thing I was just thinking about as Jenna was talking, like if you go back 10 years ago or maybe more, like we would email our customers and they would come to our site after they've been in our stores before they go to our stores. And like that was sort of it. And now they're coming to us through a million different marketing vehicles. Every one of those has a completely different expectation. So like my social channels are going to convert at a completely different rate than email. And then there's the people that just come straight to express.com and want to buy. And so that is also an interesting thing to decipher. Like when you're cutting it up each week and you're like, well, how do we do? And you're like, well, we were really pushing social hard. Well, that converts lower because it all drives to our product pages. And like in this given week, it was a friends and family event. And, that was direct traffic. And so conversion was really good. it's just not easy like it used to be, the good old days. So it's just a more complicated equation now.
Yeah, I mean, do you guys also kind of feel like, I mean, pre-pandemic, it felt like, we were already seeing the kind of the consolidation of the mall stores to like regional flagship centers. But I think a lot of people were saying, okay, well, that's where we're going to have people connect with our brands. And then maybe the website will be a little more fulfillment or second, visity. But I think the pandemic has forced our hand there. And I think, we kind of see that you guys need to, and Brian, I think you just said it, and there it's right. It's, you need to kind of connect and get people to connect with you digitally. And I'm wondering if that also puts pressure, right, in terms of these KPIs.
Well, when you're looking, oh, go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
Back to you, Jenna.
Oh, thanks. I was just going to say, and I think to your point, Strauss, like the pandemic gave us this opportunity to capture all this data, right? Everybody was migrating to e-commerce and becoming these known entities. And so now we've got this, unbelievable access, this unbelievable pool of data that helps us better understand not just who our e-commerce customers are, but who are our customers in context of our actual physical store locations, and how can the intersection of those physical stores and those digital engagements help better inform where we meet our customers. Because the whole point here is when a customer comes to the site, we don't know what their intent is. We don't know if they're trying to buy. We don't know if they're pre-shopping a store. We don't know if they're brainstorming. We don't know if they're just getting inspiration. And so having this new kind of layer of data and regionalization context, I know for us has been unbelievably helpful when trying to prioritize BOPIS, trying to prioritize the regionalization of our communication, even our assortments, our allocations, and our planning, what products should be where. I mean, it's really all converged over the past year. And I think COVID really gave us that deep pool of data to really learn from, to be more strategic as it relates to who our customers are and how we can best serve them.
Well, and the pandemic's certainly been a wild ride, because if you think about like stores were closed, then stores were open, but nobody wanted to go to them. Right. And then all of a sudden, everyone wanted to get back in stores. And so watching your conversion trend and trying to understand like, well, wait, okay, last year was Omicron. Like what was happening then? And so trying to understand all of your channel trends has been incredibly interesting as people have like fluctuated in how they're shopping. The one thing that's good is that they're at least shopping. And so that we're thankful for. Yeah.
Yeah. Shopping somewhere.
Yeah.
So we know you are all looking on your sites for places that friction could be happening with a customer. How are you doing that? Jenna, I'll start with you. How are you identifying it? And then what are you doing with that data?
Other than being a Contentsquare customer. I
got her as a speaker.
Well, here's how I split up the technology, actually. There's kind of like two paths here. One is optimization or finding gaps in existing technology. And that's kind of where we let Contentsquare play right now. How do we measure our current implementations where we see opportunity for innovation and growth? The other side of this, which we had an incumbent in place, so forgive me, Brian, but we had already licensed a find and fix solution called Noibu. And the find and fix solutions, if you're not using them today, they're unbelievably powerful. I can speak to the Noibu implementation. Essentially what this is doing is it's monitoring the site, right? And it's looking for exit experiences or high bounce rates or massive decreases in conversion. And what's really interesting about the way that Noibu does this is they take a look at your customer engagement and the customer journey and conversion rates as customers come down the funnel into cart. And what they essentially do is based on where the bug is identified, they'll put a number to it. They'll say, if you didn't fix this bug over the course of the year, you'd be leaving $1.2 million on the table, right? And so what's really interesting for us is being able to actually rank those issues and challenges by perceived lost revenue. It's a great way to do it. It's a great way to quantify the value of these bug fixes. And on top of that, we have stack tracing that helps us identify, breakage in the code that gets us really quickly to the issue. So that alongside a Jira integration that's dynamically creating tickets and pumping this to our SI and helping them prioritize. I mean, this is an essential practice. If you don't have it today, you need to have it. And it's something that we use to, quantify and prioritize the work that we need to do from a bug fix perspective, not so much from an innovation perspective.
Fair.
Well, that's more important than ever. If resources are tight, if you have a dollar amount, it takes the emotion. It takes this is my project, your project. it's the equalizer to your EBITDA.
Yeah, and it's a massive cheat code for every SI on the planet. I mean, every systems integrator should actually buy this technology on behalf of their clients, and be leveraging this as a cheat code to, some of the most pressing, relatively easy issues to fix. We've had a lot of success with it.
Yeah.
Seewald, what are you guys doing at Express in order to find these friction points, and then what do you do with them?
Well, first of all, Jenna, if you and I can maybe later on talk about this whole dynamically creating Jira tickets thing, I am like all in on that. My team would probably be very thankful. But like when Strauss was doing when you did the poll question earlier, and you sort of had the list of what are the things that you're doing, my answer would have been all of the above. Because we monitor and those kind of alerts that you get, like, okay, PayPal went down for a split second, or this thing is not working, or that thing is not working. We jump all over that. We create a P1. We do all the things. What customer feedback helps us with, so we use customer comment cards and all of that feedback that comes in. It's more of the other, like the frustrations that aren't necessarily because things are broken. It's because you have a user experience that could be improved. It's because it's not necessarily a functional bug, but it's definitely still something that isn't optimized. And we focus a lot of our energies on that. Like, where are the places where it's just maybe a little confusing? Like, we thought it made a lot of sense, and then we put it out there and we realized that it didn't. And customers will tell you that all the time. We get hundreds of customer comments a week. And I literally, between my technology team, my UX team, and me, we put ourselves through the paces every week. We rank all of our customer comments and we read them, and we start with the bad ones, all the ones and the twos. And it's like, I'm pouring myself a bourbon and I'm like, how am I going to get through this? And then I start reading the 4s and the 5s at the end. And I'm like, oh my God, we're so smart. We're really good at our jobs. Everyone loves us. And so it is one of those things where, but in reading that every week, there's a theme. So like, you find the defects that the alerting won't find. It was back in 2020, we had a thing specifically in our app where products were repeating as people were scrolling. There's no alert that would have ever picked up on that. Customer feedback gave us that. Boom, fixed. So I think the customer feedback piece is really important. And then, of course, digging through, we use Adobe Analytics. We use a similar service to Contentsquare, digging through that every week, all the heat mapping, et cetera, and figuring out, like, where are customers dwelling? Where are they getting hung up? Where are the bounce rates increasing, and all of those things. So it's really that all of those things working together, hopefully, are helping us to identify things quickly and get them fixed really quickly.
Just wanted to pick up on something Jenna talked about, which is the prioritization aspect, which is incredibly important. And I'm glad to hear that Noibu was helpful to you. I think one of the things that we do at Contentsquare, first of all, we absolutely have a similar capability. And in fact, I kind of made my career initially in terms of Seewald, kind of what you were talking about, which was, how do you go find all the things that aren't broken, quote unquote, that are still presenting as an obstacle to customers? And this is the thing that I think is particularly interesting in this, and sort of existential, because we all understand errors in page performance. We understand those things, and we can go look for them. And it's great for something like, solutions to say, okay, we're going to surface the most important ones of those. But how do you find out stuff you didn't know about? And I think you're right to say that, customer complaints are a fantastic source of that. The question then always becomes, how do you make that fast to go from an anecdote of, hey, your site sucks, to actually knowing what that means, creating that business case when something's not actually broken. It's just 25 people a day find it confusing. It's working. It's fast. You know what I mean? So, and there might not be a broken line of code necessarily. And so I think that's what we're talking about, was like, when you can prioritize those things based on a rapid understanding. Reactive is good, but hopefully something you also have the ability as an industry to be like, you know what, frustrations is increasing for this segment. Let's go. It's this much revenues at risk. That's why it's even worth my time to go look, right? So I love it. I just, really hoping a lot of the other folks out there also get on board of doing it this way. I think it's great what you're both doing.
I love that point of view. So, okay, so let's think about, you have a couple of projects. They're all going to have a great financial ROI. Good problem to have. Now we have limited website, people, time, resources. How do you balance that when it's team, it's platform, it's, just it's the amount of time runway you have till peak. How are you guys balancing this, and how are you deciding which projects to kind of move forward on or not move forward on? Jenna, in our prep, you had talked about some kind of unsexy projects that really hit the nail on the head. Do you want to start with that?
I can talk about the unsexy ones. I can hit the sexy one first. Also, if that would be helpful, I can talk about them both. So, when we're looking at trying to figure out how to prioritize some of this work, there's obviously like this beautiful balance between level of effort, customer expectation, potential revenue, right? And so, we're always kind of looking at these through these different lenses and trying to figure out, okay, what is the right opportunity right now? Obviously, when it comes to bug fixes, that makes it pretty easy. We can look at the lost revenue and prioritize accordingly. When you're looking at innovation, we're trying to find technology that can drive some of these top KPIs. But I'll give you an example. So we were using search out of I don't know, is search sexy? Maybe it could be.
For this audience.
Powerful.
Yeah.
So it wasn't when this began. So we had search. We were using. We're on Commerce Cloud. We're using search out of the box, and we didn't talk about benchmarks. We didn't really know what to expect necessarily. We saw that there was utilization. We saw that the conversion rates on search mirrored the rest of the site. We thought, all right, it's consistent. Customers that engage on the site, customers that engage with search, are converting at the same rate. Is there some opportunity here? And the more we dug into it and the more we looked at our competitors and their search experiences, the more confidence we had that looking at a third-party technology to bring in from a search perspective would really have the ability to move the needle. Not only that, but I talked earlier about boosting and burying, making sure that we were prioritizing the product that was going to drive the most bottom line revenue. Well, search is also another fantastic way of doing that. So we thought, all right, worst case scenario, we get the same amount of engagement, but at least we highlight and sell through product that's going to drive more bottom line opportunity. So that was kind of like mini business case 101. Okay, this is kind of like this is a win-win situation. So we did it. We actually, we bought Algolia, implemented Algolia. And while we've seen roughly the same utilization of search just by having technology that's faster, better, more comprehensive, better results, more personalized, all the good things that search should be doing, we saw roughly a 4x increase in conversion just by having a better search experience. So yeah, for us, that was a huge win. But Strauss, to your point, understanding when something's deficient, it might seem at first glance like it's working just fine. Mm-hmm. But how do we really educate ourselves that there's opportunity there, right? And I think having partners like Contentsquare that can kind of bring these benchmarks out and say, hey, this is how this should be performing. This is what good, bad, and neutral means in the industry today. And we can monitor and measure that for you and help you identify some of these near-term opportunities. I think that's really, search was a really big example of a win for us.
I love that.
Yeah.
So I'll attack this just a little bit differently because I think, the way I think about this question is, well, how do you decide? How do you prioritize? And especially at a time when you are trying to be a little bit conservative walking into a year. I had said to somebody, like, we don't know what to expect in 2023. So in that sense, it feels a lot like 2008, 2009, the last time I was sort of like, oh, don't know what the customer is going to do this year. And so when approaching it conservatively, I always think back. So pretend it's like 1997 and it was my first day and my first job, and they handed out these rulers at May Company, and there was a magnifying glass on the ruler and it said, focus on the critical few. Was, I think, the saying. And they pounded that into us. Two things, that and newness drives business, the two things I heard for my whole time there. But I actually go back to that focus on the critical few thing. And 2023 for us feels like, what are the few things that we can do that move the needle, but ladder up, since we're in a very interesting time for our brand, ladder up to our brand purpose. How am I helping my customer create confidence? How am I helping them add to bag? How will they know something fits them? How will they know that they won't have to return it? How will they know how the fabric moves? And so when you think about things we're working on around our fashion projection, around amplifying user-generated content, which is hugely important to our customer, around diversity of body type on our site so that you can see how things might fit your body type and not just our studio photography. those are easy things to pick off and say, you know what, I know that's going to help our customer. I will test it to make sure that it drives conversion and sales. But I know it's also in keeping with my brand purpose. And when I can only do X number of things this year, because we are going to be a bit more conservative, that idea of laddering up to our brand purpose takes even more importance. And having been in retail as long as I've been, I've never had a brand purpose this easy and clear to understand. And so my team, we will literally sit in meetings and be like, well, is that going to help our customer have more confidence in buying? And if the answer is no, we move to the next thing. And I've just never had that before. I've always had a brand purpose, but I've never had one that sort of cuts through it all this easily for me and my team.
I love it. Building on what you just said, I mean, gosh, buying jeans online has got to be one of the hardest things to do in the world.
Jeans and dresses, those two businesses are tough to buy online, and yet they're very good online businesses.
Right. I just find it's interesting. And Jenna, you talked to us earlier about profitability, right? So we certainly tackled, conversion rate. One of the main things that I think is there's an opportunity, right, is using analytics more in real time to make sort of the marketing and customer service work together better. And what I mean by that is if you take a step back and you think that throughout the buying journey, 30% of these people are going to hesitate because they have questions. And the typical thing that we've always done as an industry is tried to position as much as we can on a page to help somebody, for different scenarios, answer a question or anticipate it. But I think there's actually an opportunity to look at, what kinds of questions per step in the journey lead to the most contacts or the most abandonments, and then to use analytics to understand in real time when somebody's hesitating or slowing down, and to pre-position and using sort of the 80-20 rule for starters of like the kind of thing that is going to help them figure out how something fits their body better, or showing somebody how this works with things in your wardrobe, or even, oh my gosh, building on a previous knowledge of what somebody's bought, right, to kind of position things. So I'm wondering if you guys think about these things. And the reason I mentioned profitability is obviously if I can answer questions at scale digitally, I'm going to not only get less bounce, but I'm going to have fewer contacts to the contact center, right? And we achieve our goals of digital containment out there to a degree, right?
So I think all the time about versatility. Like, how, when someone is buying something, will they know that they can either outfit it with other things on our site or know that they've got something at home already that's going to perfectly go with it? Because that's going to get me that frequency and extra purchase. So that I didn't hit on earlier, and I probably should have. That's the other key thing outside of our brand purpose, is this idea of versatility of outfitting, which is not just a conversion driver, but average order value too. The idea of I can make this go with things, and then you're getting towards like personalization too. What did I already buy? And then how do I make sure that I get that next item to go with it? We call that buildable wardrobe. And we have an email program dedicated to it, but I would love to bring that to the website as well. And so you come to the site and it's like, I know you just bought that blazer. Here's the skirt, here's the pants, here's the shirt that goes underneath it. Here's all the things that you need. And hopefully at some point we'll get there.
There's an asset creation play here as well, right? And this is something that we leverage Contentsquare for, is to understand, which asset types, whether it's on body, whether it's not on body, whether it's nose down or it's full body, are there color correlations? Are there specific locations on the site that are just going to get more engagement and drive more traffic? We really want to understand from an asset creation standpoint, what's working and what's not, so we can create better, more compelling, more engaging, more click driving assets. And so, one thing that we've really found is measuring PDP conversion rates that have video versus ones that don't, and being able to see that when consumers can actually see the product move, see a zipper zip, see a close up of a feature, and kind of have more context as to how it really moves and feels, and the quality. We're seeing better, obviously better conversion and better engagement. So. And you can make those assumptions that that's actually going to work, but having the tools to actually measure it and prove it, will allow you to drive the direction you need from an asset creation standpoint to make some major changes and create consistency across the creation process.
That's great. I was going to say is this isn't only for the retail world, right? So we have you talked about personalization, which I think there's a lot of opportunity, because right now personalization really focuses on items that people can buy and less on experience and relationship overall. And I think when you look at, like, even in travel or financial services, for example, where, once I decide to do business with you, the actual application or working the sign up process takes forever. It's a really long time. You may not do all these things in a single session. And I think that there's opportunity to kind of build on sessions, just like you might build on a wardrobe. It might be like, hey, welcome back. Would you like to pick up where you left off? Or maybe how was that trip to Aruba? Do you want some other, Caribbean sandy beach destinations? And just actually engaging somebody like a human and a person. I think that there's a lot of opportunity to use from analytics. I mean, why should our stores look the same way on the 30th visit that they, as they do in the first? So I love hearing what you guys are talking about.
So we had a whole list of other questions, but I'm going to shift to some audience questions because we've gotten a bunch, and that's why we're all here. So the first question came in from Greg O'Leary, which says, interesting data point by Strauss about the impact of slow load times. Do any of the other panelists have a point of view if headless is conducive to your faster load times, or if you have any experience with slow load times and, improving slow load times on your site?
So we are headless, and we moved there in 2020. A work already in progress when I got to Express. It's one of those like causality things, like, are we faster because we're headless, or are we faster because, our technology team just did a pretty fantastic job at the replatform? Don't 100% know the answer to that. But what I do know is that faster is better. And that conversion improved, and that SEO improved, and everything is better when you're faster. And and we love the platform that we're on, and I'm happy to take questions about that separately.
I love it.
Yep, faster is better. Not headless,
but still fast.
Still fast. Could always be fast.
You're last. Was that a
That's
saying?
right.
I don't know.
Not first or last. I think it's
Not first or last. Talladega Nights, mixing it up.
All
right.
Not to rain on anybody's parade. I think fast definitely is better. I think that we can say that. I think the only thing we would say at Contentsquare is we have a few examples of where really cool but slightly slower actually improved conversion rate, reduced bounce. So I think we just want people to know. It's a balance, right?
It's a balance.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in our world, we're dealing with really high traffic events where, we have hype selling, right? So we have hundreds of thousands of people that show up for thousands of pairs of shoes. You're right. And so site stability and site speed is important, but not the end all be all. Stability, yes. Speed, no. We know we'll sell through the shoes, right? They have enough demand that, we could sacrifice a little speed for more stability. And so there are scenarios where you just kind of have to know the moment and know your audience and know the current situation that you're in and make sure that you can serve that appropriately. But except for those scenarios, I'm going to go with those exceptions.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
All right. Question number 2 that came in from Maura Miller. There's the age-old question of investing in getting people to download and use native apps. Do the panelists here feel like there's value in this to deliver a better experience for your brand? Do you want to start, Seewald?
Sure. So we have a mobile app. In my past, I had one in my last company as well. And my answer was the same then and it is now. The app has to have a reason to exist that is different than the reason that your website exists. And so for us, that's loyalty. And the app exists as the absolute best manifestation of our loyalty program. It has some different features and perks. It is a better shopping experience, but it being a better shopping experience in and of itself wouldn't be enough for people to download it. Like, people's phone real estate is so precious to them. And like, what's on your front screen says a lot about you and all of that stuff. And if you want that real estate, that app has to have a reason to be. And so for us, we pegged it to our insider program, and we'll continue to enhance. We just launched a refer a friend program. You're all getting links after this webinar, and we've been really happy with it. But the app's actually really important to our business because it is where our most loyal customers shop all the time, and it represents a significant part of our business. So once we got it there, now it's a matter of keeping it there. and making sure we actually had a whole project for a couple years called Web App Parity. And the whole thing was we sort of neglected the app while we were focusing on the overall digital business. And we had to play catch up. We had to go back to the app and be like, well, here's features that we've launched that we never did in the app, and getting them back to being exactly the same as each other, at least from a base experience level. And then the app layers on that better loyalty experience.
Yeah, from our experience, we're coming up on 4 years in the US. Our app is roughly 2 years old, right? So we had like time with and time without. What I will say is engagement in the app is like time in app is higher than time on site. So we're getting more playing going on. Average order value is higher. Conversion is lower. But the value is really there. And I think what's really exciting about the app for me, and kind of talked about this before, I feel like mobile web is very transaction based, right? The goal is conversion, right? It's not building identity. It's not building brand. It's getting the right product in front of the right customer to drive a conversion and drive a sale, right? That is the priority number one. With the app, you have a little bit more flexibility, and it really serves as an environment to really put these beautiful marketing assets that we spend tons of time and dollars and resources and celebrities to like really build and engage with these niche markets. And in the app, we get to tell these niche markets that we know who they are, we know what they want, we know how to speak to them, and we give those assets a life off the grid, right? Off the Instagram grid. We allow it to live on longer and actually directly tie back to conversion and tie back to revenue. And so, for us, the app's been really a great place to do that. And I think that the time in app is a good indicator that people are looking for more content. They are engaging with it. They are watching it, which is great. And then Brian Seewald, to your point, we actually have a hook too, right? There's always got to be a hook for the app. Ours is store raffles, right? And so in the sneaker business, you kind of throw your hat in the ring for a chance to win the right to buy the shoe, right? Again, high demand, low quantity. We allow all store raffle entries to happen in the app. So that's our hook, right? And that's why our conversion is actually lower, because we have a ton of people that just come to enter. But it's a great acquisition opportunity for us. We require logins. We get access to, data and the right to market. And it's a beautiful feeder for the site in general. So, yeah.
I think it's also interesting in the context of profitability. When we talked to some C-level folks recently, they were another cross industry. They were talking about how important app is just to stop the bleeding in terms of paying all the acquisition sources for repeat traffic, which I think is really interesting. And so I'm wondering if you guys see that as part of your toolkit as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm in it for the geo. I'm in it for the push. Push is a hell of a lot cheaper than an SMS.
Well, and you're pushing to the very specific subset of customers that are your most loyal. And so the metrics on a push notification are, very positive.
Through the roof.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. We have 1 minute left. So I don't know if we have full questions, but I want to thank everybody for being here. This was an incredible discussion. It's like y'all have been doing this for 20 years or something. But thank you all so much for this. This webinar will be available, same on Big Marker here for the next 2 weeks, and then over on YouTube again. So thank you all so much. If you did ask a question that did not get answered live, we will try to follow up with you if we can get the answer for you and send it to you via email. So thank you again for tuning in, and we will see you back on March 22nd here at 2 p.m. Eastern. To Contentsquare, thank you.
Thank you.
Jenna and Brian S. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all.